Hello and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we're here with Lilian. So Lilian, how do you deal when shit gets real? Or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My day job, I run a business as a PR coach and publicist, and I work with creative entrepreneurs to empower them to learn how to push past limiting beliefs, to gain the confidence to learn how to launch successful PR campaigns for themselves. So when you talk about shit getting real, mindset is something that I deal with on a daily basis, personally and professionally. So definitely, I would say what I've gone through personally has definitely affected how I manage things professionally. And we can definitely get into some of that in regards to just my experience with it and how I've kind of come to a place where now I'm coaching entrepreneurs on how to push past their own mindset blocks, right? So
Definitely.
I'd say you've come full circle, which I mean is kind of cliche, but it works.
Yep. Especially for our podcast, huh? So what is one of the biggest issues you see with your coaching business, and how do you help people overcome?
One of the reasons why I started doing PR coaching was because when I was just doing the campaign side of things as a publicist on the service provider side, I noticed a lot of the same limiting beliefs come up, like a lot of fear around results and spending money and time and energy, a lot of anxiety over not being able to control the results they were getting or not getting. And then the other part of it is a lot of unrealistic expectations on what those results will be, where it will get them, and just, how much effort they had to put into the work themselves.
Because let's face it, this stuff takes time. We know we have a podcast and it's little by little.
Little by
Absolutely.
little.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Was there a common limiting belief that you saw among people?
It's really interesting you asked that question, because I find with a lot of the women that I work with, fear's the really big one. So fear
I could see
of
that.
being judged, fear of being dismissed, fear of being exposed, as imposter syndrome gets really, really big with them.
Yeah.
So fear of oh my God, people are going to see that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm not worthy of following, or my story's not worthy of being heard if I'm doing an interview. It's really, really big with women. What's funny is I've encountered more men who have more unrealistic, lofty expectations.
Honestly, that tracks.
It's led by their egos in regards to I've never done an interview in my life, but I want to be a media mogul and I want you to get me on Jimmy Fallon, right? I've heard that so often over the years, and it's
really?
And it's that's not how it works. If you don't have any experience,
you have to be like the 1%. You know what I mean? How long it takes to get to that 1% can take a whole lifetime.
Oh, yeah. And not to mention, it's they're banking on something going viral. It's a Hail Mary. That's what it is, right?
Oh, my God.
And I always tell my clients and even people in my audience, the worst thing you want to happen is if you have no experience and something does go viral. You don't know how to handle it. Suddenly you're on the couch on stage on Jimmy Fallon or Kimmel or whatever, and you're embarrassing yourself because you don't know what to do. And I'm like,
and you don't know what you're talking about necessarily. You spouted off something onto Instagram, it went viral, and now you're like, oh, fuck.
Right. And it's recovering from that embarrassment is going to take you a lot longer than if you had actually taken the steps to work your way up to that.
Absolutely. Right? I find it really interesting how different the men, over here, us women are worried about imposter syndrome, and the men are like, get me on Jimmy Fallon. Hello, Gap.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's definitely I don't know if it is a gender divide. I don't know if it's just the professions, right? Because I talk to a lot of women who are authors, and then there's the men who are more the entrepreneur type, the startup founders and all of that. It could be that. And it could also just be like, I find like their perception of self and like their willingness to kind of sit down and actually get introspective on like, what do I actually want to do? Like, what do I actually want out of this? Not enough people spend enough time to actually sit there and get specific about what they want. It's just, I want more sales. And it's like, well,
I want millions and I want to be on Jimmy Fallon.
right. It's like, great. That's awesome. I would love to help you. My problem is it's not specific enough for
Right,
someone like me,
Well, and it's too broad, or what
Yeah.
those suggestions that I just made, like they're very broad, and it's like, okay, well, there's 10 million ways I could get you millions of dollars. How exactly? I
Right.
mean, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily, you're not necessarily giving out billions of dollars, but to help them get that goal.
It's amazing how common imposter syndrome is among authors, because I never realized that until I started making more author friends. And I'm like, oh, okay, imposter syndrome is not so
I feel like it's a woman thing in
Also
general. It just
Yeah, and I
feels
think
like
it's
it
also
is.
a creative thing because we put so much into what we're
yes.
creating with a book, and we are worried. We spend a lot of time worrying about how other people are going to perceive it and everything. And that's actually something that I went through professionally, but like to go back a bit, I spent a lot of my life living in like a traditional household. I'm a first generation Chinese born Canadian, so my parents are boomer immigrants.
Yeah.
Huge age gap, huge generational divide. Um, so what that meant in my household was a lot of top down stuff, not a whole lot of self control, right? It's like you do what I
You do what I
say.
tell you.
Yeah, we know best. Like, your opinion doesn't matter. Just do this. So there was a lot of like control on that level, and that generated a lot of like generational trauma for me, for my brother. I understood where my parents were coming from because being immigrants and all, like my dad didn't reunite with his parents until he was 28.
Okay.
So he basically raised himself. My mother, didn't come to Canada until she was 17, and as the oldest of five, was tasked with raising the younger siblings, particularly my youngest uncle, who was like a newborn when she moved
Yeah.
to the country. So I understood all of that, but it didn't make living with it any easier, right?
Right.
Where you're not allowed to express yourself. The expectation is that you need to get a job, and that job, if it's not doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, needs to be with the government because they give good salaries and they get
And
you a
good
good
pensions.
pension. So they're like, do that, stay 3 or 4 decades, and you're set, right? Like they prioritized financial stability over
Oh
everything.
yeah.
Didn't
Over
believe.
happiness, over
Oh yeah.
everything. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, did not believe in like what the heck's a mental health day? Like what does that even mean? It's like you don't have to be happy in your job, you just have to do it, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of how this was the environment we were raised in, and then you add on to the fact that there is a 13-year age gap between my brother and myself. He's 13
Oh,
years my
wow.
senior. So we were
Wow.
both
Were you like a surprise, like, hello?
yeah. Yeah. And it was like, okay, so you have that, and then there's like I grew up with mobility issues from being born early, and so all of these different layers of things.
Yeah.
And like my brother, I always say he was my third parent, but he was the parent who understood me. He was the parent who gave me that sounding board and that support and everything. Whereas my
Yeah.
parents, very, very heavy top down. So I started to rebel in my own ways, right?
Not
And I
surprising.
no, and I did that initially actually by, since I recognized at a very young age these two individuals are not going to give me what I need emotionally and mentally. That's when I started going to counseling off and on.
Mhm.
And through that, I kind of found more of a healthy sounding board to learn how to work through the issues as they were going on. And that,
It's shocking that you were able to recognize and go to counseling, you know?
yeah, it helped. Like I went through school initially with the counseling
Yeah.
before like going private and that, and it like I'm always forever grateful that I had my brother. I had like my whole family's local, so I had my brother, I had some cousins that I could rely on and stuff like that. That made growing up in that house a lot easier. But I
Yeah.
spent, probably I would say 10 to 15 years going to counseling off and on and finding that really cathartic.
Mhm.
Oh
But
yeah.
at the same time, I was building my business. So I was building my business. I started as a university student looking for what you guys would call paid internship experience
Oh yeah.
in
Mhm.
order to land a job, right? Like after graduation.
Yep.
And at that time, I said, well, nobody's going to hire me unless they can see what I can do. So, in order to do that, I have to build a portfolio. So, to
Yeah.
build a portfolio back in the day, I was cold calling and cold emailing something like 40 plus businesses a day just to
Wow.
see who was going to give me a shot, right? Ended up landing some work with one of my early mentors who was running a marketing agency. And then I started doing copywriting and social media and that. And you can imagine that living in that house at that time, I was getting no support.
Oh yeah.
I was getting
Because you weren't
like,
a doctor, because you weren't a doctor, lawyer,
yeah,
accountant.
yeah. And so living in that house, I mean, was tough. You can imagine, like, doesn't matter how big the square footage is of the house, you don't have enough room to live with two people who do nothing but try to dissuade you very
Yeah.
judgmentally from your path, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
while I was dealing with this and trying to figure out the best ways to grow my business, I ended up like getting into a couple of things mindset wise, which led to some not so great business decisions. Like I had 1 year where I didn't make 1 cent, no money whatsoever, because my focus was on the wrong spot. I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
take on the wrong projects, and I was trying to work with the people who were doing nothing but trying to talk me down price wise. And and
Uh
and and you know that like that's never going to end well,
no,
right?
that's never
No.
gonna end well.
So I was going through that, and at the time I was also by this time I had like moved out of the house and everything. I was engaged, but I was still hearing it a lot from my parents, a lot of the
Yeah.
doubts, a lot of the judgment and everything. And I had a choice to make. It's like, I'm engaged, we're wedding planning, we're moving, didn't make
Yeah.
any money in my business this year. Do I still want to do this? It was kind of one of those crossroad moments. And I
Oh
thought to
yeah. That
myself,
sounds classic crossroad.
you know, when things are good, I still love doing what I do. Like
Hmm.
I
Of
really do. And I,
course.
and I know that there's still more for me to do out there. There's still more people that I want to help. I want to continue this, but in a different way. And that crossroad moment ended up with me taking on like PR as part of my business because at the same time, I had also had a lot of folks come into me and saying, hey, do you offer this? Can you write me a press release? I don't know what the heck I'm doing with it. And I thought,
Uh-huh.
I'm tired of telling people no.
Yeah,
Let's
clearly
try,
there's a
like,
demand for it. You might as well go for
yeah.
it.
So I was like, let's try this out. Let's see how it goes. I ended up cutting my teeth working for a lot of local PR agencies, getting into doing it for film and TV, which I love. Met some fantastic directors and producers through that, built up a real network of media and podcasts that cover horror films in particular. I'm still friends with
love
those
horror
guys
films.
to
Yep,
this day.
me
You know,
too.
we talk all the time. But then it was also like, okay, I'm coming to my next crossroads of I'm getting burnt out on the service providing side. I don't want all of this stuff just to be me, like the campaign results and everything just to be on me. And I didn't want to expand to run an agency because I've been where, you know, hey, I'm worried about putting my own dinner on the table. I
Right.
don't want to be worried about doing that for
Everybody else's.
like
Yeah.
my employees too. So, you know, and then I had people saying to me, hey, you know, I would love to be able to work with you on a campaign, but I can't afford it. So I'm like, by this point, I'd been doing this for, you know, 14, 15 odd years. And I said, there has to be a better way for me to continue to work with folks, impart my knowledge on them, and also, you know, educate them on what PR is about. But I need that outside perspective. Like I'm missing that outside perspective that's going to give me guidance on where I want to take this. And that's why I invested in business and mindset coaching. And let me tell you, mindset coaching changed my life professionally and personally.
I don't doubt
Because
it.
it really helped me get to the root of my life, my coping mechanisms, and help me learn how to show up better for my audiences, for my clients to continue to add value. Because I had spent a lot of years, just like the people that I'm trying to help now, thinking, why can't I just let what I do speak for itself? Right. Like so many of my
Yes.
clients come to me and say, like, why can't it just be about the book? Why do people have to know about me? Right. Like it should be
Yep.
the book that matters. And for years, like I was the same way. I'm like, I have my testimonials, I have my case studies. This shows people what I do. That should be good enough. And the problem with that is it showed them what I could do, which, you know, hey, there's thousands of people that do publicity, right? It
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell them what they were actually getting into working with me.
Yeah.
And through mindset coaching, what I realized was the reason why I was so afraid to share more about like my process as an entrepreneur, my mindset journey and everything was the fact that I was worried about losing control. And the reason I was worried about losing control was because growing up, I had no control,
Yep.
Oh yeah.
right? So when I came to that realization, it was like, okay, how am I going to get past this? Because I can't very well help people work on their mindsets if all I'm doing is hiding in a closet myself. Like
Yeah,
that's not fair.
absolutely.
You can't, you know, talk the talk if you're not willing to walk the walk.
Yep.
And it wasn't like I realized that all my years of counseling were great for catharsis, but what they weren't doing was addressing the root causes. And through mindset coaching, I realized that, and I came to the once this happened, it opened up everything for me where it was like I realized where my need for control stemmed from. And what I had to do was learn how to forgive myself for
Yes.
what what I wasn't able to do to have control over growing up, and recognize that at that time with who I was and the knowledge that I had and everything, I did the best that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I did that, I mean, the entire world opened up.
Yeah.
So were
I
you
would.
ever able to like forgive your parents?
Um, I would say that at this stage, the boundaries are up, things are civil, and that is about as the best that it's going to get, I think. Just
I just
because,
wasn't sure if you would like cut ties after like you realized all of these things, or if you were able to like, okay, I understand all of this trauma and I forgive you. Like I was like, where does that?
I understand that. I don't know that I'll ever get to forgiveness. And I think one
Yeah.
of the reasons why is because, like I said, everybody's still local. And I
Uh-huh.
have really strong ties to my extended family. And what
Mhm.
happens is they tend to rely on my parents for gatherings and things like that. So the waters get really murky when you can't
Yeah.
independently have relationships like with the aunts, the uncles, the cousins,
Yeah.
stuff
And you
like
still
that.
love everybody and whatever
Right, right.
and
So,
whatnot.
I mean, it to me, it's the best that it's going to be. And, in the meantime, I'm living the life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to have that, now that I have a better understanding of where I'm coming from on that, that's where I'm able to coach my clients and sit down with them and go and understand, like, I understand you're afraid of sharing your story. Let's dig a little bit deeper as to where that's coming from, how we can address it, and how we can help you push past it. And that's one of the big reasons why it's such a huge focal point in my first PR book that I'm writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, so many authors and entrepreneurs in my audience had said, following you on social media is great, but I'm getting the bits and pieces, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
getting the tips, which is awesome, but I'm not seeing the entire strategy, the big picture on a daily basis. So would you, and I want something to be able to refer to,
Yes.
if it,
Yeah.
as I'm following you and everything. So I said, why not write that book? Because this is something that I've lived professionally for a number of years. This is something I've lived personally on a mindset wise for 36 years, my entire life.
Mhm.
And it's been really great. Like people are excited for it to come out. I'm currently running a campaign for it, and it's doing well. I'm definitely excited to continue to help as many people as possible, give back to nonprofits, grow the coaching side of the business, get out there and do more speaking events. And to think, like, even just a few years ago, I would have never done that. Like, I was so busy grinding my business one way and
Yeah.
hiding behind, not wanting to come on camera and everything else, because I didn't want to lose control of my narrative. And what I've learned
Right.
is that it's not control I'm losing. What I've done is that I've learned to let go of the things I can't control.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I totally relate to that because I love having something tangible that I can look at and hold. Actually, one of the first books my dad ever gave me was a book about mindfulness. So, on that note, do you have any books about mindfulness that you like that you would share with us?
It's not so much books. I find like what I do for my kind of mindfulness practices, I turn to a lot of meditation and self-hypnosis. So there are some great like guided meditations from even like Headspace has free ones that you can follow on YouTube. They also have some great asthma tracks, like if you're having trouble falling asleep. Goodful is another one that I do. I used to do every morning about like a 10-minute guided meditation to start your day where they just focus on like what is your intention for the day. And from doing that, like my philosophy is now on a daily basis, hey, if I do one thing today, it's a great day. I'm accomplished. I'm satisfied. I don't need to be rushing through, a to-do list that's a mile long. And it really kind of helps me prioritize my energy more because before my anxiety was so out of control, I made myself sick. I lived with a chronic illness for 8 years. Every time I had a
Yeah.
flare up, I'd be on my living room floor curled up in a fetal position, losing 5, 6 hours of sleep because I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep because of the pain. And
Oh
my mind
no.
was racing and everything. And, through doing the mindset work and, also getting treatment and stuff like that too, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like my anxiety is not keeping me up. I'm not having flare-ups. And, in doing that meditation and incorporating these daily affirmations and mantras into my life, it just becomes so much easier to prioritize me, which I
Yeah.
spent like, what, 25, 30 years not doing.
So, do you have a piece of advice to entrepreneurs so that they don't spend the 14, 15 years grinding away? Not to say that you wasted any time, but just maybe to save some other entrepreneurs some time or some wasted efforts.
I would say, even if you are afraid or anxious about starting something new or getting out there, take those baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be anything big. You don't have to start out doing a podcast right away. Reach out to somebody in your network that like does Instagram lives as an example.
Yeah.
Because you already know
Those are
them,
huge.
you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with them. It makes it a lot easier to just get on there and have a conversation between the two of you. And the more you do that, the easier it's going to get. Like take those baby steps. It doesn't have to be anything huge. Just reach out to who you know and see if you can put something together. And, when you're first starting out, it doesn't even matter if nobody's paying attention. It's
Mm-hmm.
just for you, the two of you, to get comfortable having that conversation
Trust
together.
me, nobody wants to listen to our first episode. I mean, come on, Rietta. We just kind of did it. Like we talked about it and talked about it, and then we just, okay, we're gonna record on this day. Like, let's just do it.
I don't know. Somebody
Well,
probably wants to listen to it.
well, in my mind, I'm like, please don't listen to it. Listen to all the other ones. The first one we were like, or at least I felt like I was so nervous.
Honestly, don't even remember anymore. We're talking like
Yep.
4 years ago now.
2019, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, February of
Time
2019.
time
Woo-hoo.
flies when you're having fun.
Mhm.
I mean,
That
so
actually, go ahead, Annie.
in that way, you are correct. That is exactly what we did. We first talked about it, planned it a little bit, and then just did it.
Just did it. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think another thing that you mentioned in your pre-interview was a lot of it has to do with like lacking confidence. And I mean, a lot of people do lack confidence. And is there anything that you've noticed, like what might be like the biggest culprit for why people lack confidence, or is it just all over the board?
Well, going back to what we were talking about before, imposter syndrome is a really big one. Coming at it from my own experience, the family expectations can be really, really heavy. Particularly like in my case, if you get no support in what it is that you want to do, then you want to prove yourself even more, right?
Oh,
Which
yeah.
can also put added pressure on getting to those milestones and getting those results within a certain time frame, which of course, as we all know, isn't always realistic.
Oh, no,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So like family pressure is one. Seeing like comparison syndrome, I find, is also really, really big among entrepreneurs and authors
Oh,
in
yeah.
particular.
And in
Because
general, especially
oh,
social media never helps with comparison.
absolutely, because we only see the end result, right? We don't see how many years and how much energy it took somebody to put that stuff together.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, what I always try to counsel my clients and my audience on is like, remember, you're only seeing the end result. They're
Yeah.
they've probably gone through the same issues you're moving through now, but everybody has their own time frame. The other thing that I think plays into a lack of confidence is the perception from a lot of people that they don't have time.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Yes.
That's me.
Everybody wants everything done yesterday because we keep thinking we don't have enough time, right?
Oh yeah, Connie tells
And
me all the time she doesn't have any time.
I don't. Hey, to be fair, I have a little baby, okay? He takes up a lot of time.
Sure, but it's also like, I mean, there's a lot of authors that I work with and that I talk to that are moms. So they're
Mhm.
doing things like I'm taking my kid to dance lessons and I'm writing in the car because you
Yep.
do what you got
Because
to
that's
That
what
do.
was
Brianna
me.
does. Yep.
That was me. I take my kid to soccer, and while he was in soccer, I'm typing in the car.
Right, because you prioritize it when it matters to you. But it's
Yes,
also like,
absolutely.
I have to remind myself of this, and I tell clients this as well, is that you always have time, but what you don't have a finite amount of is energy. And if you push yourself too hard, leading to burnout and getting sick means you're going to end it's going to take you a lot longer to get back to where you are now, let alone move beyond that. So you're
Mhm.
better off just taking it incrementally. And I put together mantras for my clients all the time. I do it for myself, where it's just like I have time and everybody has their own journey. I can cheer somebody else on without feeling like crap that somehow I'm not progressing like they
Yeah.
are.
I
Yeah,
got a
for
great
sure.
reminder of that this week from my husband because I think a lot of us forget this. You can feel two different things at the same time. Like, for
Mhm.
instance, we just had promotions in my job and somebody else got one over me. And it was valid that I was excited for her, but also sad or disappointed for myself. I think we really get caught up in like, you can only feel one thing at a time. And like, that's not
Not
true.
how it goes. Mm-mm.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't make either emotion bad,
Right.
right? You just have to recognize that both of them deserve their own space.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the hardest things that I struggled with when I first became an author is the people that I expected to get support from, I didn't. And the people I didn't expect to get support from, I did. So it was very strange to me. I was like, whoa, like there's people
Well,
coming
now
out
I
of the
want to know
woodwork
who.
like that's cheering me on and like that I haven't talked to. And then there's people that I was like, oh, they'll absolutely read this that didn't like it's crickets.
Yeah, it's interesting as you make decisions to change something about your life and about your journey, who will actually resonate with that, who will support it, and who will understand it. I In a weird way, I almost consider it a blessing that I learned very early on in life not to expect support from the
Yeah,
parents.
because
So
to want the support and then not get it all of a sudden would be like, what?
Yeah.
right, exactly. Whereas, like, I'm lucky enough that like I have fantastic friends that I'm able to lean on, that all of them have been my friends over a couple of decades now. I still have family members that I lean on, and the husband as well, who really do understand what it is that I'm trying to do, and that it's not an overnight thing, especially since, I've changed directions a couple times here, right? Like I started
Yeah.
out with copywriting and social
Yeah.
media, pivoted to PR, and then added on to PR. And now I want to do more things like speaking. I want to do, and all of that stuff takes time because
Yeah.
nobody's
Yeah.
going to hire you for like, here, I'm just going to chuck 15 grand at you to go speak at a conference when you have no experience, right? It's
Right.
just like
Not gonna
every
happen.
Yeah.
other aspect of PR. So,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
when does your book come out and what's it called? So we know.
the book is called The Powerful Publicity Prescription. I can definitely send
Oh,
you ladies a link for the current campaign right now. If things go well, and they're trending that way right now, I'm looking at probably first quarter of 2024.
nice.
And
I'm assuming, do
I'm
you have it on Kickstarter? Is that what you mean by campaign?
crowdfunder actually,
Okay.
and I chose
Similar
crowdfunder
type of
because,
thing.
yeah, like it's Canadian, and I just
Gotcha.
like the functionality better and everything.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I'm giving myself till then because I'm also doing a workbook and a glossary with it. just to
Oh,
kind
that's
of
cool.
round everything out so that people can read the book, get the terms defined in the glossary, and then actually take action with the workbook, right? So that's the plan. It's going well so far. Still
Awesome.
a lot of work ahead, right? I'm trying to pace myself through it and everything, and just remind myself that I still have time.
And you'll
Um,
definitely have to remind us when the book actually does come out so that we can post about it as well.
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, and certainly, I don't know what you do for your day jobs, but hey, if you guys want a copy, I'd be happy to send you one too. Like, it's no problem.
I would absolutely love a copy. I mean, I'm an author, so I need all the PR stuff. And
And
obviously
for the podcast, I
I was
guess.
gonna say, and obviously the podcast needs it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Social media is our nemesis.
I hate it. I loathe it.
Oh,
If I could, I'd get rid of it all.
I
But
don't
it
blame
just
you.
doesn't work like that when you have a
No,
podcast.
doesn't.
I don't blame you for that, but one thing I will say this about PR is that PR can help you beat the algorithm. Why? Because the content you create, like the interviews that you do with everybody, it's not living on Twitter, it's not living on Instagram. The more you post it, the more people will see it, right? It's not being
True.
controlled by that platform. You control it.
Absolutely.
So, like, in that way, because I've seen, so many of my author audience talk about, like, I post something and literally not even the people that usually care are seeing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is because these platforms prioritize different things. Because when they say, oh, we want to see more reels, they're still only promoting reels, certain music, certain graphics, certain topics, right?
It's super annoying.
So, like,
I know how to get a lot of views. I just post my baby. It always gets a lot of views. It's the chubby cheeks and the red hair.
This is the one thing I love about Twitter, because it's like the one social media that it's acceptable just to like yell into the void. Like, you can literally post anything and like it's just there.
Yep, she made a Twitter for our podcast. Are you posting on it? No.
I figured, why the hell not? Well, there's not a lot to post right now when we're not posting episodes, but yes.
That's true. That's true.
We're on a little break, but not for much longer.
Find you and follow you on there too, because I'm still on Twitter talking to folks.
Yeah, there you go.
Daily basis, and yeah,
I hate it all. I do it, but I hate it all. It's fine.
I know. I just, there's days that I want to give up, and then I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna keep chugging along. Just keep swimming.
It has helped in the last few years in growing your network on globally, on an international scale, online, because you couldn't meet in person, right? So in that way, that's
helped. Actually one of the coolest things about the podcast is how many people we have interviewed in so many different countries.
Yes.
France and Australia and Canada, like a bunch from Canada, actually. Like, that's like the coolest part. We're like, oh, like, we would have never met you normally, like, and now we get to hear your story. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah. And see, and then like we met you because of Kirsten. So like just the train just keeps it keeps going and keeping picking up passengers as it goes.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it has its benefits, even though it has its drawbacks. And for sure, all the author friends and clients and stuff that I have that always feel pressured to kind of consistently post every single day, and they struggle with coming up with a content strategy, I always say to them, like, consistency is what you make of it. So for some expert to say you have to show up every single day and you have to post reels and all this other stuff, forget about it. Just look at, what feels good to you and what actually reflects like what you're working on, right? And if that's you can only show up 3 times a week, do 3 times a week. It's fine. Like,
yeah, because it does become daunting.
It does. I used to feel that way. I used to be like, oh my God, I have to post every day, or at least have to post like Monday through Friday because everybody's busy on the weekend anyway. And now I'm like, F it. When I want to post, I post, because I can't. Like, I don't have the spoons to post every day.
I feel like it's going to eventually turn that way anyway. Like even with all of like the influencers and stuff, it's going to become eventually for everybody too overwhelming and people are just going to post when they want to post, you
It's a
know?
lot. I mean, like we talked to a gal who's a pretty big Instagram influencer, and she told us how many hours it takes her to make a 30-second reel. I mean, it's a full-time job, really.
Mhm. And it's the kind of thing that most people don't get paid for, right? To market
Right.
their own businesses and everything else. So you really have to be, it's really about being strategic on where do I want to spend my time and energy.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and if I carve out, let's say, a couple hours on a Wednesday to do this today, can I walk away from it afterwards? So then
Yeah.
you're preserving and prioritizing your energy for other things.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any last notes for our listeners? Any tips, tricks, anything you want to impart on us?
Um, I think the big thing I'm going to say about PR in general is that if you get an interview or you do an event and there's a video from it, you can't expect to post it once and have thousands of people like it and book calls to talk with you or want to work with you as a client. It doesn't work that way. The best way to get in front of as many people as you want to get in front of is to stay consistent with sharing it. That doesn't mean sharing it every day. It means look at a calendar. Here's a month. Can I share it maybe 3 to 4 times? And each time I share it, is it a different clip? Maybe a different image, maybe a different quote to entice people to actually start paying attention. Because the other thing I've learned, people these days need to see something about 20 times before it sinks in and before they feel compelled to actually go do something about it. So, what
Hmm.
you need throughout all of this is the understanding that it's going to take time, and what you're doing is growing your patience.
Yeah, definitely.
20
Well,
times
thank
is
you for
way too
coming.
many. Oh my God. Just had to say that.
Actually, like I feel like that tracks because I was reading something. I don't even remember what, but it was basically that your toddler has to eat something 20 times for them to decide whether they like a food or not. So I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Like, yeah, that makes sense. I literally just read this about toddlers and eating. I mean, same difference because you're eating, I suppose, the
Mhm.
content. And it's very true because there are a lot of the same videos out there. And to stand out, you're going to have to keep on posting. It makes sense. But thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We enjoyed speaking with you, and we'll see everybody else next episode.